Hello and welcome to the National Debate. I'm Madhavdas G. Viewers, the preliminary AAIB report on the Air India 171 crash has raised more questions than given answers. While the focus now is solely on the fuel cutoff switch, the report from the AAIB seems to have given ammunition to the conspiracy theorists, particularly in the foreign media, who've now tried to pin the blame solely on the pilots. There seems to be a concerted effort by the Western media to call it human error or even pilot suicide. The preliminary probe report revealed what led to the crash, but stopped short of naming who is responsible. And the foreign media won't tell you that an erroneous fuel cutoff input could have a lot more to do than the pilot's actions alone. Today on the National Debate, we separate the facts from the fiction and tell you what really could have caused the plane to erroneously cut off fuel to the engines. We also put the focus on the faults within the ill-fated Boeing 787 Dreamliner that crashed in Ahmedabad. Those that could have played a role in the cutting off of the fuel to the engines, and why the Western media should have thought twice before jumping the gun. Let me quickly introduce our panelists who are joining us here in the studio as well as outside. With us here in the studio is Suhel Seth, columnist. We have Wing Commander Sharath Panicker, who's a retired 787 Dreamliner pilot. We also have with us here in the studio Dr. Sumit Suseelan. He's a member of the Ministry of Civil Aviation. Joining us is J.S. Rawat, former Joint DG of the DGCA. With us also is Captain Ehsan Khalid, who's an ex-airline captain, instructor and examiner, as well as a veteran IAF pilot. We have Captain Saurabh Bhatnagar joining us here in the studio as well, who's a former A320 pilot. Joining us from outside are Terry Tozer, who's a former airline pilot and author. Dr. Jason Knight is a senior lecturer in fluid mechanics, also joining us from outside. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us this evening. Let me quickly take you through the first talking point that we're discussing on the show. And the first talking point, in a sense, is what the Wall Street Journal has claimed, not once, but twice. They've come out to say that there are new details which shift the focus towards a senior pilot inside the cockpit. They've also gone on to claim the black box recording indicates the captain turned off the switches. They've gone on to further claim that the first officer asked the senior pilot why he moved the switches. Remember that no specifics have been named in the AAIB report. They go on to say the first officer was flying the Boeing 787 Dreamliner. Now, this is part of the report, of course, and the first officer expressed surprise and then panicked. They further add that he said the captain, the senior pilot, seemed to remain calm. How do they know this? We're not quite sure yet. So these are some of the sources that have what the sources have told the Wall Street Journal, and this is what has been claimed. Now, the AAIB, or the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, has slammed what they're calling a premature narrative. They're saying that sections of the foreign media are drawing conclusions prematurely. It's selective and unverified reporting that is irresponsible in nature, must refrain from spreading premature narratives, is what the AAIB says. They add that the investigation by the AAIB is still not complete and it's too early to reach any definite conclusions at the moment. Let me start with our panelists. First and foremost, I want to start with you. Suhel Seth, the point is that when there is an investigation underway, we know that as per the ICAO rules, it's going to take about a year. But this is just a preliminary report. Is the Western media jumping the gun? Because many say that this is also just following a certain agenda, particularly the US media from where Boeing hails.
They're just laying a trap of deceit, of agenda building and nothing more. Let me play it out for you. By constantly hammering on the pilot issue, they are moving the needle away from Boeing as a company. And they need to do that. They need to do that because Boeing's shares will tank and its economy in America will be screwed. That's number one. Number two, you tell me how erroneous and irresponsible is that reportage which clearly says the first officer said this to him, he seemed calm. Were any of these jokers there? Were any of the Wall Street Journal people there? Is it part of any investigative report? Answer is no. I have a very simple logical theory, Madhav, on this entire horrific crash. The crash happened on the 12th of June. By the 12th of July, a report called the Preliminary Investigation Report should have been readied, and it was readied. Now, people are saying, oh, the Wall Street Journal had access to that report 2 days before the report was actually published. Who's part of the investigative process? NTSB. So now let's lay out the scenarios. either the NTSB has compromised the investigation report timing, or the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau in our country has done it. Either our people in that bureau are on the take or are on Boeing's payroll. I don't know. But I still trust my government and my AAIB more than I trust two hacks from the Wall Street Journal. No one knows what happened. And until we know the whole truth, everything is conjecture.
Right.
And what is worse, Madhav, is that you are talking and running down two dead pilots. You are putting their family to national shame. You are creating havoc with the lives of those who live today, who've lost their loved ones. I mean, what on earth are we doing?
Let me put this across to Terry Tozer, who's joining us from outside. Terry Tozer, how do you look at this? Because, you know, there are those who are saying, we all know what happened when the first 737 MAX crashed. At that point of time, there was a concerted effort to pin the blame on the pilots, and later, it took a second crash for them to arrive at what was the technical problem with relation to a particular sensor, which was later rectified. So why should we take these reports that are coming in the Wall Street Journal or any other media at face value? Terry Tozer.
Well, we shouldn't take them at face value. To leak information is completely out with the protocol of any investigation, and any proper investigation will do exactly what these investigators have done, which is to produce a preliminary report which gives you some of the facts so that you know kind of what happened, but you don't know the why. And we simply cannot make a judgment until you get a full report or somebody releases more clear information. Unfortunately, the report says that the switches transitioned, and so therefore that does indicate to many people that somebody actually did it. And until somebody can provide a technical explanation for that happening some other way, which is the sort of thing that comes out in the final report, we can't really judge. And I have to say that in my experience, I've never heard the NTSB or the UK AAIB ever leak a report. And we simply need to, I would say you need an investigation to find out who leaked information, if indeed that's what they have done.
But Terry Tozer, look at the language used even in the AIB report. They're using language such as the fuel switches transition. Now, a number of the experts who I've been speaking to have been telling me that this is the language that's normally used when you talk about a valve shutdown, that the valve transition. So is there a little bit of, creative interpretation of what has happened? Is it possible that there was some kind of error, electrical, mechanical or otherwise, that could have got the engine to shut down through the FedEx or some other control system?
Well, that was my immediate reaction before I read the report, that there must be some electrical malfunction that's caused this. Having spoken to a retired Boeing design engineer who was involved in the certification, he says that it's not possible. But I'm not technically qualified to judge one way or the other. The report, obviously these conversations that they briefly released from the microphones of the two pilots. What would be interesting is to hear what they've heard from the area microphone on the flight deck, because that might pick up any movement of switches, but we've not heard anything about that.
Okay, let me get Wing Commander Sharath Panicker on this. Wing Commander Panicker, what's likely to have happened? I mean, everyone talks about the pilots themselves. The speculation is unfortunate because A, you have a person whose parent is 90 years old. They've lost their son in this tragic accident, and all sorts of wild speculations doing the rounds. Number one. Number two, is it at all possible, or even if we wanted to know what has happened, the basic requirement would be what has happened as far as the cockpit voice recorder is concerned? We have a sliver of information, but not much beyond that.
Okay, let's just review the facts once again. What is available to us is only the report which has come from the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau. What is clear is that everything was normal up to 3 seconds after liftoff, at which the report states that the fuel switches transitioned to cutoff within 1 second. Please pay very careful attention to this 1 second part of it. I've been a Dreamliner pilot for 10 years. I've got more than 4,700 hours in command on this particular aircraft. I've operated these switches hundreds of times. Now visualize the situation in the cockpit. Both the pilots are concentrating on the takeoff, because that's the most important part. Presumably, the first officer is flying. He is looking through his head-up display, concentrating on the rotation, because he has to rotate to 15 degrees of pitch. The other pilot, the pilot monitoring, presumably in this case Captain Sabharwal, is also looking out of the cockpit. Far accommodation, you're looking outside. And now, as the liftoff has taken place, anybody who has to do anything inside the cockpit first has to go from far accommodation in terms of focus to near accommodation, which is inside the cockpit. Identify a switch, pick it up because it's spring loaded, move it to cutoff, release it. Do the same procedure on the other switch, pick up the switch.
So you're saying it's physically impossible to do that?
I'll just come to that. And move it to shut off. And it says this whole procedure is taking place within 1 second. 1 second is a very short period of time. Physically, I would say it's near impossible. I've been a fighter pilot in which we had to react very, very, very quickly. Otherwise, things could go catastrophically wrong. Even we, with my reactions, even if I were to think of that, I can't do this in 1 second. I've heard some reports in which it has been tried out in simulators, and the closest anybody could come to it was 2.5 seconds, which is also logical, because there are things to be done. It takes time. And a 1 second is a very short period of time. In contrast, a signal or multiple signals can take place within 1 second. Because these are just electronic signals,
right,
which are coming from sensors, going from the FADEC. I mean, it's a vast computer network. And just for information, there are only two things that can switch off an engine automatically via the FADEC. One is on the ground by something called the TCMA, the Thrust Control Malfunction Accommodation System, which senses that the aircraft is on the ground. And you have a situation in which the thrust on one engine is more than the other, or it cannot be controlled, which would lead to a yaw on the ground. The second is an overspeed condition.
Okay.
So these are the two cases in which...
We'll come to the point. We'll come to the point of shutdown, but I want to quickly bring in our other panelist from outside the studio. Dr. Jason Knight is with us. Dr. Jason Knight, it's physically impossible to do this. Extremely difficult, says a veteran Dreamliner pilot. He's flown over 4,000 hours. Why wouldn't you take his word at face value and go with the conspiracy theorists? Because it appears to be just that. It appears to be a conspiracy theory at the moment. Dr. Knight.
Yes, I agree. 1 second is a very, very short time. I note it took 4 seconds to switch them back on. So, yeah, it does seem very strange in a very short time. So, like your panelist said, that about 2.5 seconds would be the quickest that anybody could normally do it. It is still, in my mind, it's still unclear as to how this happens. We know that the engines were starved of fuel, which caused the dual engine failure, but we still don't know how or why that happened. The preliminary report, it really has only kind of delivered the facts, but hasn't really delivered any analysis so far.
Yeah, you corroborate that, Captain Ahsan Khalid, what he says about the 2.5 seconds being more practical than 1 second?
Absolutely right. There are two more things that we should understand. If those two pilots were standing alive here and saying, I didn't do it, then there was no other option to Boeing than to get on the drawing board and find out how technically the switches can transition from 1 to 0 and 0 to 1 electrical terms.
Right.
Okay. And in this, the maximum urgency would be to the pilot to put the switches on. We know the switches have been recycled, and 52 seconds to 56 seconds, so 4 seconds exactly. So a pilot in the dire state trying to start the engine has been able to move those two switches at 4 seconds. And at 42, they have been able to move it in 1 second, that is 500 milliseconds. Right? So when you talk about milliseconds, you're talking about computer signals. you're talking about electrical signals. And we need to go back one step. There was last snag was a stabilizer position transducer, right? Not to get into detail, was it a mechanical fault or was it an electrical fault?
Or a software one. There's also software.
Right. So we don't know. Was that an indication that things were going wrong with the aircraft from before? If you see the switches, there are just 4 switches on the throttle quadrant. There are 2 fuel switches and the left is stab trim switches. There are 4 switches. Was there electrical signals which were, not really right? Okay, we don't know. So the hypothesis that we can't find the real reason or a logical reason to this engine failure does not lead to a conclusion that it was a willful thing.
Correct.
Well, all it means is that we are not able to find out, or the OEM is not cooperating enough, because obviously first case of 737 MAX was not a technical failure. The 5 cases of Boeing 737-200 and 300 we are talking about 93 to 2004. Aircraft, perfectly flying aircraft, used to roll, yaw and dive and kill everyone. And every time it was pilot's fault. Till such time, a pilot came back alive and said, look, I didn't do anything. Aircraft on its own, yaw, dived, and I kept on pulling. It was not pulling up. And then suddenly it was okay. Now there was a live pilot. After 5 years, maybe 5 accidents or more, Boeing sat on the drawing table and then said that yes, there is a design fault in the rudder, and all the aircraft thereafter has that design fault corrected. So if we do a correct investigation like TCMA, cutting it off, did we know about it before 2019 that both engines can be shut down by something called TCMA, which is not even told to the pilot? Did we know the aircraft will actually dive because of MCAS on...
This is what happened in Japan. What happened in Japan, for instance?
So, what I mean to say is that if you can't find out why, then let's conclude we have not been able to find out. That's
we have a lot more to rule out. Essentially, we have a lot more to rule out. Captain Bhatnagar, I want you to quickly come in on this. I want to take quick first comments from everyone before I go into the next round. Do you agree with this theory that at the moment there's too much on the table, too much speculation happening, and too much of possibilities that are not being explored?
Yeah, fully agree with all the panelists here. We all know it has been conclusively established that it is humanly impossible to switch off these switches in 1 second. I've been flying Airbus 320 for so many years. Similar kind of switches there also. We also take at least 3 to 4 seconds to switch off these switches. Now, thing is, the AAIB, I think, is very selective in giving out the data. As per the ICAO Annex 7, Annex 13, Chapter 7, they have to disseminate data. Only the data of EFR, and that too not fully has been given. Now, how do we, if the AIB had only said, yes, these fuel cutoff switches have transitioned, that means 2 possibilities, either manual or electronic signal. Now, had they left only this much, not given the CVR paraphrase, first, initially, did you do, and secondly, made a call also, they did not say who did it. Had they not brought out this, it would have been definitely, left to the Boeing. Yes, there has to be some, they would have definitely given some recommendation to Boeing, and entire fleet would have to be grounded 787 to check all these things. To avoid that and steer this entire investigation towards the pilot side, they have said, yes, it is one pilot said this, did you cut off? Not that means that it is a pilot's fault, which is absolutely incorrect. They are jumping, and how did this all release?
Let me come across to other guests as well. Dr. Suhel Seth, let me ask you this. The point is that, the report A released in the middle of the night. Why was it released at 1:30? We don't know. Why was there no statement from the Ministry of Civil Aviation or even the AIB? We have nothing. After 5 days, after a lot of speculation in the Western media, now you have a statement coming in yesterday where they're actually talking about what actually transpired and how this is unfortunate. Why did they wait from Saturday to Thursday to put out a statement? A lot of clarifications could have been put out, which could have set the speculation to rest.
Madhav, I would like to say, why it came out midnight. We have to understand the ministry is working day and night to resolve this entire issue and to come out with a result. So that's why the report came out at the midnight. Okay, and I should make it very clear, the AIB had never revealed a single recordings of the black box. The Wall Street Journal, whatever they are saying, this is speculation. They just want to predict, because they had got some of the reports from the ATC convention where they said there is no power. So with that, they started speculating that there is no power inside the aircraft. That was the thing they started speaking at the time of accident itself. So the ministry had never revealed anything, because some
So who has
documents.
revealed it? NTSB has revealed it.
Yes.
Or ICAO has revealed it.
How can ICAO will reveal this thing? Because
ICAO observers are there. NTSB
they are
observers are there. That's what we know.
But
I mean, from what's out there in the public domain.
country,
This is not a state secret. I'm
yeah,
sharing.
from the country, definitely we have not revealed anything. Because if anything is revealed, might be the copy will have with all the media. The media doesn't have any copy of black
The
box.
Western media has it, sir.
The Western media has, but
the
they have
Wall
never-
Street Journal, I beg your pardon, claims that it has it.
They have not showed any media reports. They are just writing in their statements, in their reports, but they have not given the recording.
Sir, have you read the Wall Street Journal report?
Yeah,
you know
I've
what
read
they
that.
say? They say that the NTSB chairman has heard the entire CVR. So how is the NTSB chairman heard the entire CVR without anyone in India knowing
But
about
how
what's
they
in the
came to
entire
know who
CVR?
is speaking? First officer speaking or captain speaking? They had just given their words.
That's
right?
what I'm saying. They have, for such details, one person is calm, the other person is perplexed and panicking. How do they know all this?
We have never revealed this thing.
Setting a narrative. It's a very old technique, Madhav, that speak and utter all kinds of lies, and hopefully it will become the established narrative. What are they doing? They are deflecting from Boeing. What are we discussing here? We're discussing, oh, pilot, which pilot spoke, which. So they've already started the deflection process. They will now do everything in their ken to make India's aviators, India's aviation ecosystem look weak. Why? Because they have to defend Boeing. They are not there. You know, it's like that old Shakespeare thing when Brutus was asked, why did you kill Caesar? He says, not that I loved Rome, not that I loved Caesar less, but I loved Rome more. These chaps don't love aviation less, but they love Boeing more.
So
It
it's
is
a plant.
typical
It's a plant is what you're
American
saying.
ploy. It is an American ploy. How, you tell me, how on earth does Wall Street Journal, who the American president as of last evening has again abused, how does the Wall Street Journal know which pilot was speaking? How does the NTSB chairman hear all these, hear the recordings which no one else in India knows? Then my recommendation would be the Minister of Civil Aviation, who's a good chap, he should come out and issue a statement. Because the problem here is our silence is seen as complicit, and people will blame. People will say that, oh, AAIB may be also compromised. Look, if Boeing wants to compromise people, they are not looking at nationality, they are looking at purpose.
Absolutely. They're looking at their commercial interest, and actually the Minister of Civil Aviation did give a statement, but his statement was wait for the final report. So that's where we are as far as the
I'm
government
saying in
is
relation to the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah, absolutely. Lot of clarification required. Mr. Rawat, you're someone who has handled investigations. Before the AIB, we know DGCA used to conduct these investigations here in India. What has happened over here appears to be such a lot of confusion and so much of, fake information that has been spread, and no one's precluding any possibility. But the point is, how can you second guess and arrive at a conclusion like this? Paint an entire picture, dramatize what has happened inside the cockpit. It was about 30 seconds, of the entire flight time. But all of that, it has gone completely in one direction. Who's responsible for it? Is it AAIB? Is it the investigators, the government, the DGCA, or those who are painting this picture?
As I said earlier also, that from the very first day, we had not done the things properly from the AAIB side. There was no appointment of the investigator. The investigator the lead investigator has to be there, who will carry out the wreckage assessment and all those kind of things. After that, then there was a participation from the NTSB, Boeing, and other participant from the, I think UKCA was also there. So all these people have to carry out the investigation under the control of the chief investigator appointed by the AIB.
Right.
Now, when it was appointed, nobody knows. We have just seen from the report that the complete committee was appointed. Which date it was appointed, that date is also not there. So all those things, these people have, NTSB has come up, they were associated, but nobody was controlling them. They have got probably what I can presume from this thing, that NTSB has taken the CVR recording also, and may have shown it to their NTSB chairman also, because nobody was controlling them. Right. There was no investigator, because there was a lot of talk about that in our earlier show also. There was chief investigator. There was from the media also why the investigator is required. The investigator was required only to control all these activity which has happened now.
Absolutely.
And we are exposed now on this issue.
Absolutely. I think that's a very relevant point, Mr. Suhel. Why was there no formal notification that A is the investigator? He has flown so much of time on a Boeing aircraft or on a Dreamliner, this could have been very transparently, very easily done because we have so many pilots. We have a Dreamliner pilot with 4,000 hours sitting next to you, standing next to you.
Was there a pilot as part of the investigation?
That
is the problem.
That itself we don't know.
We are so good at screwing ourselves. I mean, if you had a pilot, you would have had some expertise. Now, the Wall Street Journal will say, these chaps didn't even have a pilot.
And no engineering.
It's like asking someone to repair a tap who's not a plumber.
Yeah, Ministry had formed the committee immediately after the crash happened. Okay, the news had not came in the media. Okay, but the committee had formed, and the entire investigation was going under this committee itself. So basically, might be the media is reporting.
Does the committee have a pilot? Simple question.
Yes,
in English.
It has. The committee have experts, and they take the
have
view
a pilot.
because the simulator check was going on before the review came up. There are multiple simulator checks done.
Are you from the ministry?
Experts are there. Expert investigators are there. Mr. Rawat is an expert investigator, but that does not mean he's a pilot. His question is there a pilot who has the required experience to investigate a Dreamliner?
There were people, because the check which was going on the simulator, there are multiple people from in the committee itself who were appointed from the ministry side. So they were the expert pilots in 787. After that only the report came up.
Why was this not shared in the public domain? Many will ask that because, tomorrow if there is a question from Boeing side or any of the other regulator side and they have come out and say that this was not made public, we don't know who the investigators are, that takes away from the credibility of, we're just saying, the credibility of the report investigation will come under question.
These are the things that we mess up on. You have an expert body where there are no experts. A pilot would, like how he has explained it, if you had a pilot as part of your committee, the credibility of the committee improves. The problem in India is we have all the aviation experts, more than functioning traffic lights, but none of them has flown a plane. Now that is in itself tragic.
Having a pilot on board,
ridiculous.
It's in the investigation committee, not as an outsider.
Absolutely.
He will all be taken an expert, but not put in depending upon the investigating committee whether to put his word in the report or not.
Correct.
But if the pilot is appointed as a part of the investigation committee, it is binding on the committee also to take his views, and he may also say, this is not correct what he is saying in the paraphrasing.
So collection of evidence becomes the investigator's point of view. To ensure that there are no leaks becomes the investigator's point of view, and all of this could have been prevented if we had a lead investigator. That's what you're saying?
Yes.
That's a very important point, Mr. Sushil. Do you agree with him?
Yeah, I do agree. We had appointed, but yes, nothing came up in the media that time because everything was confidential till the time the review came up.
Was there a 787 qualified engineer on board?
That's another question. Very relevant question. Is there an engineer?
Yes.
Is there an engineer?
Yes, there was an engineer.
787
You know the name of the
I'd be
engineer?
surprised if there is a committee.
Okay. No, there is a committee.
By what's happening,
There
I'd
is
be
a committee,
surprised.
but I'm told there's a Director General of Police and there are other officials.
What will the Director General of Police do here?
That's the point. Whether there are those who are in fact qualified for the 787 Boeing is the question over here.
Yes. There were people who were qualified as an engineer as well. The AMEs were there. Even the pilots were there because there were multiple times the check happened, the simulator trial had, and after that this report came up.
Okay.
Madhav, why don't you ask the Wall Street Journal to give you the names of the committee members? They'll have it before you guys do.
The way things are going, quite likely. But yes, Commander Panicker, would you like to respond to that?
I have not heard of a pilot, a Boeing 787 Dreamliner pilot who is on the committee, nor have I heard of a 787 Dreamliner engineer on this committee. This is the information that I have. If the AAIB has taken
why not put it to rest? Why not put it to rest? Put out a public statement that these persons are appointed. Finished.
If they've taken the help of some people, it's different. But are they part of the committee? I don't know.
Okay, Captain,
I don't think so.
If we are of the opinion that Wall Street Journal is fishing and does not have the information, right information, AAIB has the information. One simple statement that whatever they have said, no such communication has ever taken place. Don't release the CBR. Don't release transcript.
But they've only said it's irresponsible.
They have Wall Street Journal has said pilot number 1 said this, pilot number 2 said this, this was the tone, this was the calm, they said, right? It is now important to AAIB to say that we know what has happened and there was nothing like this that happened. Either Wall Street Journal is telling the truth or they have no clue. If they have no clue, it should be denied. It hasn't been denied.
Okay, let's move to the next talking point.
It is such a
Very quickly,
sensitive-
30 seconds, please. Yeah, quickly, make your point.
It is just a sensitive matter. MOCA or DGCA should come out immediately with a press conference. That is the first to deny and put everything to rest.
Absolutely. In the interest of full transparency, certainly. Let's quickly, in fact, bring up the next set of topics that we're talking about. And this is the next talking point that we're addressing over here. Were certain red flags that were put out in the public domain ignored? The UK Civil Aviation Authority had put out a notice and had come out to say that they had in fact issued a safety notice as far as the 787 is concerned. There were concerns over the fuel control systems that were highlighted in their notification. The third revelation is that Boeing aircraft operators were asked to examine their fleets. Now, this is following an advisory that came out from the US. Then the UKCA released its safety notice to airliners way back in 2015. The fifth aspect that comes out of this is that the safety notice was for 5 operators of Boeing aircraft at that point of time, and they also were asked to check if the fleet was affected by US FAA's ad. If it could happen in the UK, why could it not happen there in India? An FAA directive then says that check the fuel shutoff valve actuators. This is an FAA directive which had a potential hazard involving fuel shutoff valves that was flagged off at that point of time. If UK could do it, let's quickly first discuss this. If UK could do it, questions that are doing the rounds is why could this not have happened here in India? Suhel.
So I will say this with due respect. The Director General of Civil Aviation in India is the most inept, incompetent, inefficient body managing civil aviation. With due respect. You know, all these people are involved with the system. I'm not. I couldn't be bothered. DGCA has repeatedly absolved itself of any responsibility. The Minister of Civil Aviation should take the DGCA to task, as should the Prime Minister. Because 3 things have happened, Madhav. Lives have been lost, which is the most important. Number 2, brand India has taken a huge knock as far as aviation is concerned. Number 3, our aviators, our pilots are amongst the best in the world and today are being looked upon with suspicion and disdain. It is the DGCA which is solely responsible.
Okay.
Because again in the DGCA, I'd be surprised if they had anyone who had anything to do with civil aviation. I can take a bet the DGCA will have plumbers and electricians, but they won't have aviators.
No, they have people who are
Well, then I'm
associated with aviation.
surprised.
But Mr. Rawat, you agree with that? There's a very strong words, but the point is
But it's
that
true.
if this could happen in the UKCA and 2015, I think you were also in the DGCA at that point of time. What did the DGCA do at that point of time? Because, you know, now we are hearing that it was not mandatory, it was an advisory, but some countries have issued these advisories. Why didn't India do so?
If you are talking about the safety notice of 15th May 2025 issued by the UKCA, this is the thing.
This is a repetition of a 10-year-old notice.
The 10 years.
No, 2018 was the first notice.
No.
50,
1 minute.
50.
We are talking something else. We are talking about 2015, which was issued in the 2015. Then this is the second version of it.
Yes.
Now, what is it? It is about the AD, which was issued by the Boeing in 2015. So, if you see that this accident report, and they have mentioned it, all the ADs were complied on this aircraft.
Okay.
So it means whatever the AD was issued there, it was complied on the aircraft. Whatever the inspection replacement was to be done, it was done. So it is very clearly stated in the report, all the ADs were complied on this aircraft.
Okay. So, but the larger question is, was this implemented on all the Dreamliner aircraft here in India?
Definitely. All the aircraft. It is aerodynamic directive.
Okay.
The ministry person is saying no.
No.
There you are.
One by one.
You are talking. When I am talking from a technical point of view.
I'm saying he's saying no. He's disagreeing.
I'm not saying. Let's go one by one. Yeah, Sushil, and then come across to. Yeah. Sushil, you disagree with him?
No, I agree with him because when we got an advisory, okay, it's a call from the DCA. They just give advisory to the airline, and we have only Air India and Vistara who are using Dreamliners.
Right.
Definitely, they have gone through all the checks. Without the check, definitely they will not fly.
Okay. What has happened in this case, Captain Bhatnagar?
No, see, there were 2 ADs issued. One was in 2015 and one was in 2018. Both were different.
Right.
2015 AD issued by FAA was dealing with the fuel shutoff valve actuators, where they were it was found that if there is some malfunction wherein the fuel shutoff valve will remain open, which allowing more fuel to go inside the combustion chamber, and there are chances of fire. Everybody on 787 I'm talking, they were supposed to check this fuel actuators and make a report and change it. I don't know whether Air India has done it or not. 2018 AD deal with the locking mechanism of the fuel cutoff switches. They're two different.
Correct.
So now
one is with switches and one was with valves.
one was actuators in the fuel shut off. They're actually actuators to move the valve.
Right.
To open or to close.
Right.
So that actuator malfunctioning, they were not able to shut off the fuel, so allowing more fuel to go inside the combustion chamber, chances of fire. So they were asked to change the actuators and make a report. Did Air India do that at that time? I don't know.
Let's find out from the person in Air India.
So,
did that happen? Did it happen, sir?
Which one are you referring to?
Both the UKCA, there were 2015 and 2018, they're through separate advisories. Were they implemented in full letter and spirit on ground? Because DGCA and Air India, from what I've understood, says that these are not mandatory to implement.
I would imagine, I'm not sure. That's number one. So upfront, I'm not sure, because this is something that is technical in nature, and it deals primarily with an engineering aspect, something that an engineer is supposed to check. I'm not sure upfront. But from what I've read of the media reports, something that was advisory in nature it will never be documented. Something that is an airworthiness directive necessarily has to be documented. There has to be directions to the engineers. The engineers will carry out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. After they've carried out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 successfully, they will report back that as per Airworthiness Directive AD, means Airworthiness Directive, as per AD so-and-so, dated so-and-so, following checks have been carried out, checks passed. So this would be documented. If the advisory necessarily would not have a paper trail to say that, oh, we've got this advisory, we are operating this type of aircraft, informally we have checked. There's no paper trail for that.
Right.
Whereas for something that is of the nature of an advisory, like I said, no paper trail.
Right.
But an airworthiness directive or something that requires documentation, that would exist.
Right.
From what I understand,
yeah,
it was advisory in nature and
not mandatory in nature. Let me bring in Dr. Jason Knight. Dr. Jason Knight, you know, the larger question is this. Here we are sitting and debating fuel actuators, valves, switches and what have you. And, you know, here we are also being told that all of these were put out by Boeing. Like, look, there could be a problem. FAA also says that, look, there could be a problem, but it's not mandatory in nature. There are some airlines which have done these checks and found everything hunky-dory. The point is, when it comes to safety, can we really take chances? Because there are big bucks that we're talking about. There are human lives that we're talking about. So what really is at play? And in the past, there have been allegations that Boeing has put on the altar of, profitability, safety to sacrifice.
Yes, when they issue these directives, like you say, they're either mandatory or advisory. I'm certain this will be reviewed by the Accident Investigation Board on whether or not that should have been made mandatory. At the time, they would have thought that there wouldn't be a safety aspect to it, but that seems perhaps hard to believe in the current circumstances. So I'm sure the Accident Investigation Board will be looking sort of back over that directive and to qualify whether or not that was the right decision at the time.
Right. Captain Khalid, how do you look at this? Is this something that we're making too much out of? Because in this accident, this is exactly the subject matter of debate. And, you know, people are going to say that, look here it is Boeing, which has a 787, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it costs upwards of about 2,000 crores now. We've bought several 787 Dreamliners when the first round came out. And, you know, there are about 1,200 of these aircraft flying globally, which means that there are, you know, lakhs of crores of rupees. I don't know how many dollars that is, but a significant sum of money riding for Boeing and for the United States. So there's a lot at stake here when we're talking about not just safety globally, but also in terms of the commercial aspect of this.
Okay, I'm not a subject expert, but I'll tell you very simple. 1,200 aircraft. Let's for once assume that AAIB today comes up and says there is a problem with the software or fuel shut-off valve. 1,200 aircraft will be on ground till the time the solution is found. Each airline will probably take 1 million per day as compensation. That's 1 billion a day, and the solution won't come in less than 3 months to 6 months. We are looking at $200 billion multiplied with 8,000 crores. You are looking into lakhs and lakhs of rupees. That is the commercial aspect. As I said, I am not the subject expert, but this UK CAA safety notice, it was mandatory, and it came in May 2025. There must be a reason why they looked at it in May 2025 of what was there in 2015. Why
the
would
official
they
version is the address changed.
Right.
That's the official version.
No. 1 minute. So, and this fuel shutoff valve is the right component for which transition is used.
This is the point I was
This
making.
is important.
Yes.
And for some reason, I feel that the switches have a position on-off. Right? They don't have a transition. Okay.
Correct.
Transition means from 0 degrees to 100 degrees or 360 degrees. In this you use transition. Okay, switch is on or off, run or cut off, 0 or 1. Okay, so if coming back to the larger picture, let's assume that with the data that the
May I
AAIB
just ask you something as a pilot? May I just on this very point, and other pilots can also comment. Is it possible that reading the DFDR data which talked about this transition, someone extrapolated that to assume that the switches had moved? Is that possible?
100% it is recorded in the DFDR that the switch is electrically 0 or electrically on.
Okay.
But that the switch position by the micro switch, I do not think so. I also do not know if the electrical signal has gone to 0 and thereafter if somebody moves it to cut off and then to run.
Right.
Right. In the process of starting it.
Right.
Will that be recorded like this?
Okay.
Because here we are talking about a switch which is malfunctioning.
So, I mean, I'm just thinking as a layman, all we need to establish in this, Captain, is whether the engine shut off first or the switch went off first. The whole problem or the whole crisis.
It will always be the signal from the switch that will close the switch.
But what if there's an
valve.
electrical or mechanical reason the engine is shut down?
No. The fuel shutoff valve is driven by the signal which goes from this switch.
Correct.
Okay. So if the switch is in the on position and it malfunctions and the supply is cut off,
right,
the valve will close.
Okay. Captain Panicker, is there more at play here? Could there have been other reasons? We're discussing electrical mechanical failure. What happens in that situation?
Let's go a little bit into detail. There are actually only two conditions in which the system or the FADEC is full authority digital engine control, cuts off fuel supply. Only two conditions. One is on the ground, that is the thrust control malfunction accommodation, the TCMA. But do keep in mind that this on the ground part depends upon several other factors as to when the signal has come, at what stage it's come, are all the sensors. There are multiple sensors that tell the system that the aircraft is not on the ground and is now in the air. Okay, so the TCMA is theoretically supposed to operate only on the ground.
Right.
But in the case of the 2019 accident or incident as this case, because it was not an accident because nobody lost lives,
Right.
involving the landing in Osaka by a 787, the JAL aircraft. Apparently, the thrust reversers were taken before the aircraft touched down. Apparently. This resulted in, as the aircraft touched down, both the engines being cut off by the FADEC. When the engineers came, tried to restart it, they couldn't, and finally the aircraft had to be towed back into the,
So it's happened before.
disposal.
It's happened. The shutdown has happened.
A malfunction of the TCMA.
Right.
Okay. The second condition which nobody's talked about so far is that it's a condition of overspeed protection. Okay. If the system senses that the RPMs are too high, it's overspeed, likely to result in some sort of damage somewhere or the other. The system has protection systems, several warnings. Once they go through several graduated stages, the FADEC can cut off the engine.
It could have happened in 30 seconds?
No, I'll come to that. The 30 seconds part is later. Okay. So these are the two conditions in which the FADEC normally comes in. Let's just examine the electrical part of it. Just like the other commander had just explained, the moment you put a switch from cut off to idle or cut off to run, there are multiple micro switches within the structure which make contact and tell the whole system that, boss, number one signal goes to the FADEC, number 2 goes to some valve, number 3 goes to some other valve, which tells the system, and again which is software driven, to open or close. In this case, the moment you put it, it will be to open the spar valve, it will be to open the engine fuel valve. These are electrical signals. If there is a malfunction, somebody needs to check.
Okay, but you know, I also want to bring in fact, Dr. Jason Knight on this. Dr. Jason Knight, in 2024 April, we'd seen how Boeing engineer Sam Salaipur spoke about a large number of defects or issues with the manufacturing process of both the 787 and 777 models. He had spoken about shortcuts that had been taken by the company, which could reduce the aircraft structural lifespan, and also early degradation could have been one of the risks. Are we looking at a situation where perhaps the whistleblowers, and there have been other whistleblowers who've spoken about this, perhaps what they're saying could be coming true?
Yeah, there could possibly be, sort of a design sort of maintenance kind of thing coming from Boeing, but yeah, I wouldn't really be able to comment on that. And again, perhaps nothing at the moment from the preliminary report that suggests that. So at this stage, yeah, I think it still really is too early to comment on perhaps the culture at Boeing and if that has led to it. Again, I think it's sort of jumping to conclusions. It's the Accident Investigation Board must be given the time to kind of fully understand the problem and kind of look at all the different scenarios that have caused it. Again, I think it's probably too early to kind of say that.
Right. Let's quickly take a look at some of the other points that we are discussing before we wrap up the show. Very important to look at what's been happening as far as India's overall aviation situation is concerned, and also what can happen possibly as far as this fuel switch malfunction is concerned. We were discussing earlier, an ANA Boeing 787 flight suffered a dual engine failure on the same 787 aircraft. Both engines flamed out right after takeoff in 2019. There's also, of course, another incident that we're going to be bringing out. In this case, it was a flight software that was assuming that the plane was still on the ground. Let's quickly take a look at the other aspect. Now, this is, of course, what the log mentions. Now, these are aspects of the log that sources have been telling us, and we've reported on this, that there was a potential electrical failure because of some of the signals that were being put out by the aircraft in the run-up to it. Let's take a quick look at what this really means. If we can bring out all that data, system that controls the electrical power routing is what we're talking about over here. It had trouble communicating on the left and right paths is what we are told. They don't directly, of course, ignite fires, but why these are important in the case of this particular 787 aircraft is that they can break the chain of protective logic in an electrical system is what sources are indicating, and if combined with other failures, the risk of overheating is there. Now, this is why this becomes so important to investigate all of this. We're not saying this is a definitive cause, but certainly merits an investigation. What has happened according to an RTI in the last 5 years here in India? 65 in-flight engine shutdowns. This is what has been reported. In 17 months, there have been 11 Mayday distress calls between the period of Jan 1st, 2024 to May 31st, 2025. This is, of course, in a return and for an RTI reply to the DGCA from the DGCA that we have. Let me quickly take this across to our pilots and, of course, other guests. Mr. Rawat, is this normal? Are these normal in terms of the engine shutdowns and the Mayday calls, or is this a slightly higher figure than we should expect?
No, because when you are flying the aircraft, so many things happen. Normal shutdown also take place. You must have about the G engines on the Neo aircraft, the 320 Neo.
The Pratt & Whitney.
Pratt & Whitney, sorry.
Yeah, Pratt & Whitney, yeah.
So there was a lot of engine shutdown during that period,
right,
because there was a problem in the engine. So it is normally it happens like that, but only thing you have to take the precaution, and whatever the checklist says, you have to land at the nearest airport. So all those things have to be carried out by the pilot.
Okay. Do you agree with that perception, Captain Khalid?
I don't really disagree, because the data is incomplete.
The data is incomplete.
The data is incomplete.
Why do you say that?
Because the flying has increased tremendously. The quality of aircraft has also increased, and the pressure on all airlines and operators has also increased. So I don't know. Mostly all the data should be in terms of million of hours versus the
as a proportion of the total hours flight.
So unless we have that, okay, it would be an incorrect conclusion. But what is important in this present discussion that we are talking was that, what you showed that, this aircraft had electrical malfunction history, right? If that be so, okay, because electrical malfunction is a very difficult thing to actually diagnose, correct, and it keeps on, the last one of the electrical malfunction I'll tell you was, I think, on Boeing 747 aircraft, an entertainment system had a short circuit and caused the fire, and the entire aircraft went down.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is that, if this aircraft had electrical snag, it cannot be ruled out at this
there are
juncture.
two things that are at least well recorded, and I think you will bear me out on this, Captain, which is that, one, the lone survivor, the eyewitness said that there was a loud bang and there was a flickering of lights. Flickering of lights is a dead giveaway for electrical failure, is what some experts believe. Number two, on the previous leg, from Delhi to Ahmedabad, there was some kind of a stabilizer failure, is what we are told. Can you analyze that for us and tell us how important or how significant that is?
Okay. The Dreamliner has been called the electric jetliner because of the sheer complexity of the systems involved, the sheer number of software, millions of lines of code which is written. There's a computer that controls everything, and multiple computers. And like in all commercial aircraft, the degree of redundancies are also very, very large. And almost all the faults and systems come up automatically. You have a system by which, in the ICAS, which comes and shows up. Plus, if anything does not come up in the ICAS, when the engineer comes around, he's able to see as to what have been the snags of the previous sector. And for each one of these snags, for each one of these problems, there is a certain line of troubleshooting.
Right.
And obviously, whatever has been that transducer problem which was there in the previous flight would have mandatorily have to be cleared.
Right.
For that aircraft to have been declared airworthy. So I don't think there was any correlation or condition.
But the flickering of lights that the
flickering of lights, like you've just mentioned, is associated with
some kind of electrical failure.
Some set of
some failure that could have sparked off other trouble. We don't know what the truth is. We are only at the moment looking at what's before us. And we certainly
those lights will only come on if there is a complete electrical failure.
If there's a complete electrical failure, multiple interpretations. We'd like to thank all our panelists, Suhel Seth, Wing Commander Sharath Panicker, as well as Dr. Sumit Sushilan, Mr. J.S. Rawat, Captain Ehsan Khalid, Captain Saurabh Bhatnagar, as well as Dr. Jason Knight. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us on this edition of the National Debate.